Coca-Cola spent 3 years building a global visual identity system designed to make every touchpoint look unmistakably like Coca-Cola. On July 20th, 2026, they launched it across 200 markets. By lunch, the internet had decided it looked unmistakably like Marlboro. The font was called Better With, a slab serif originally designed by Neville Brody's studio for a holiday campaign, now elevated to a system-wide role. White letters, high contrast, red background. It was supposed to signal heritage, craftsmanship, a brand reaching into its own archive for something warm and earned. Instead, it reached into a shared cultural archive and pulled out someone else's luggage. Within 4 hours, the memes were circulating. Within 3 days, Fortune, the New York Times, and Adweek had all run the same story. Not because the font was bad, because the font was familiar in exactly the wrong way. And the strangest part? Nobody could agree on whether the two typefaces actually looked alike. Coca-Cola and Marlboro grew up in the same house. Not literally, but visually, culturally, commercially. Both were mid-century American lifestyle brands that sold feeling rather than function. Both invested in visual identity systems built for recognition at speed, at distance, at the point of purchase. Both used red and white. Both likely drew from overlapping pools of agencies, illustrators, and art directors working in the same post-war visual vocabulary. Flip through magazine ads from the 1950s and 1960s, and you'll find Coke and Marlboro sharing not just color palettes, but compositional logic. The lifestyle hero shot, the aspirational leisure setting, the typography that whispered permanence and pleasure. They were siblings in a design culture that made no distinction between selling sugar water and selling tobacco. The visual grammar was interchangeable because the strategy was interchangeable. Make the ordinary feel iconic. Make the habitual feel chosen. For decades, this shared ancestry was invisible. Marlboro's brand system became so reduced, so elemental, that its red chevron and slab serif type occupied a category of one. Coca-Cola's Spencerian script was so distinctive that no secondary typeface could threaten it. The two brands lived in the same color family but different typographic neighborhoods. The overlap was always latent, it just never had a surface to land on. Until Coca-Cola narrowed its own visual system to a single unified identity and chose a secondary typeface that happened to share a category, a contrast ratio, and a color context with the most studied tobacco brand in history. The speed of the backlash is the first clue that this was not a design problem. Typographers pointed out that Better With and Marlboro's typeface are technically different fonts, different X heights, different serif shapes, different spacing. A trained eye can separate them, but plenty of consumers saw Marlboro anyway. Those consumers were not consulting specimen sheets. They were reading the way all of us read branding: fast, peripheral, and associative. A slab serif in white on a red field does not need to match Marlboro's letter forms. It needs to match Marlboro's feeling, and feeling operates at a lower resolution than form. This is where the hidden system shows itself. JKR, the agency behind the identity, built the system on a principle from Coca-Cola's global VP of design, Rafa Abreu, who wanted everything to look and feel unmistakably Coca-Cola. One seamless visual identity. One recognizable brand experience. The problem is that recognition is not a property a brand owns. Recognition is a neurological event that happens inside a viewer, shaped by every visual encounter that viewer has ever had. Coca-Cola designed a system for controlled recognition and discovered that recognition is ungovernable. The viewer's brain does not check the brief, it checks the archive. And in that archive, red plus white plus slab serif already has an owner. What made this collision unavoidable was timing. Serif typefaces are in a nostalgia cycle that has swept through consumer brands and government agencies alike. Grazia olive oil, Schweppes, Vacation sunscreen, even the US State Department have all pivoted towards serif-driven heritage aesthetics. Everyone is reaching backward into the same mid-century visual reservoir, pulling from the same well of craft, permanence, and institutional confidence. Coca-Cola walked into this crowded typographic lane and stood next to the one brand no soft drink company can afford to resemble. Not because of the font, because of the culture surrounding the font. Gen Z had already been calling Diet Coke a fridge cigarette long before the rebrand launched. The meme was affectionate, self-aware, slightly transgressive. Diet Coke as an afternoon vice, a guilty ritual, a personality trait performed with the same social choreography as a smoke break. It was a joke that worked because everyone understood the metaphor was a metaphor. Then, on July 20th, the metaphor got a typeface. The visual match between the new Coca-Cola typography and Marlboro packaging didn't create the comparison. It collapsed the ironic distance that had kept the comparison safe. A joke about soda being like cigarettes is funny. A soda that looks like cigarettes is a public health argument waiting to happen. And the public health argument was already waiting. Sugar taxes exist in Mexico, the UK, and several American cities. The soda is the new tobacco regulatory narrative has been building for a decade. When your font accidentally confirms your critic's framing, you haven't made a typography error. You've made a strategic one. Coca-Cola's leadership responded with a wink rather than a retraction. Arnab Roy, president of Coca-Cola's global category, acknowledged the fridge cigarette meme, saying the brand was building on the things people already know and love. This reveals something about how large organizations process accidental meaning. When the association is controllable, it becomes a feature. When it's not, the question is whether the brand is directing the narrative or being directed by it. Here is the honest complication. Not everyone made the Marlboro connection. For most people buying a Coke in a convenience store in Lagos or Jakarta or Sao Paulo, the slab serif registers as exactly what Brody designed it to be: warm, archival, slightly luxurious. The backlash was loudest in design-literate and meme-literate communities. Those communities are influential, but they are not universal. The font dominated cultural conversation for a week, generated millions in earned media, and did not appear to dent sales. There is an uncomfortable possibility that the Marlboro comparison, for all its apparent danger, was the best thing that happened to this rebrand. Controversy that doesn't damage the product is just attention with better lighting. But that calculation only works if the association stays playful. And associations, once surfaced, do not stay where you put them. The fridge cigarette was a joke until it had a visual identity. The Marlboro resemblance was a meme until a regulator notices. The distance between cultural play and regulatory risk is measured in exactly one news cycle. And Coca-Cola just demonstrated that a font can close that distance faster than any public health campaign ever could. Coca-Cola wanted a typeface that felt unmistakably theirs. They got one that felt unmistakably someone else's. And the reason is not that the designers failed. The reason is that nostalgia is not a private collection. It's a shared archive. When you pull from it, you do not get to choose what comes with it. So here's what I want to know. The next time you see a brand reach for that warm, heritage, craft-forward aesthetic, what are you actually feeling? Comfort? Or recognition? Because those aren't the same thing. You were trained to trust that warmth by an industry that spent the last century making sure you couldn't tell the difference between pleasure and habit. I already know the answer. I just want to hear you say it. The warmth was never yours. It was designed to be borrowed and impossible to return. This is the Threads of Culture.